Bella, you need to lie down, or we're going to put you down. That was a joke. We should tie a paintbrush to Bella's tail. We should tie a paintbrush to Bella's tail and then dip it in a tub of paint and walk around a room with blank canvas. Right, what's the time? Oh, goodness. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Sip and Sketch episode 9. My heart is racing like a stuck steam engine all of a sudden because I didn't realize we were good to go. Right, so if you haven't joined us before, this is an evening of 30 minutes of sipping and sketching, meaning you are going to have a pen, which is a water-based pen, and we are going to put some stick figures together, and I'll walk you through that. It's supposed to be a very easy, relaxing process. And you'll just need a Pilot pen from pilotpen.com, and you can order them online or get them at your local stationery store. And also you can get some nice paper here. The one that is taken out of the printer will also be suffice. Otherwise, get something that's a little bit heavier, and it takes the water that we put on a little bit later much better. It stops the paper wrinkling. And then when you put it into a frame, it doesn't wobble, and then you have a whole gallery of your work. Remember the big 5, which is it shouldn't take you 5 minutes to get set up if you're wanting to do some creative work, and you should keep your palette limited to 5 colors, and if you can work for 5 hours, you should be able to create 5 artworks in 5 weeks if you work for 5 days in a row. All right, now I do have to say a little bit of an apology. Last week, Sunday evening, which is when we usually do a little bit of an advert to say that we are going to be doing our Sip and Sketch, we had a small case of poisoning, and so we're not totally on the ball, and we were still having a small case of poisoning on the Monday night when we did this, and hence last week's episode was very short, and it sounded like I may have been underwater or not myself, and perhaps not entertaining. And also, we created a lovely drawing that made absolutely no sense. So we were going to do a little picture of a river that travels around, but for some reason this river decided to go and then stop and then climb up a hill. And then we also ended up with a blob of nothing in the middle. So you do have those every now and again where perhaps the art wasn't making that much sense. It was a horrendous case of dribbly bum before we started, and then I had to erase at the end afterwards. So we are back to being 100% this week, and we are very excited to do a drawing. So get your pens out and ready to rock and roll. Interestingly enough, if you do suffer from a case of poisoning, it perhaps was as a result of having paint on eyelids and then up the nose and it was an odd sense like cadmium. I don't think they used lead these days, but you go for a consultation, and turns out that if you have poisoning, you also have the symptoms of the virus that is going around at the moment, and so you have to go for a test to make sure that you don't have the virus. It is extraordinarily violative. They don't tell you that in the nice little adverts, where they put a rasp down your throat like they used to make sure horses' hooves are smooth. And they wiggle it about and then take it out and send it off for testing, and it comes back negative, which is great. Only had 1 or 2 of the symptoms. I suspect if you fell out an aeroplane through a forest and lost an ear, you would also have the symptoms of this virus that's going around. So it is good that everyone is being tested and that we are on the ball. Okay, right. So what we're going to do is we are just looking at seeing, generally speaking, in order to be able to follow a drawing. I will bring you up closer in a little moment, and you'll be able to See that the idea of looking where drawing is we are going to picture ourselves in a scenario, and the idea is that I want to be able to give these tools to be able to go into a scenario. If you have a little flat tire or something, leave the tire for half an hour, take out your pen and pad that's sitting behind the seat, catch a breather, do a little bit of drawing. So maybe somebody might come past and help you out. And you can catch a moment in time. And I found that over the years of drawing and sketching and whatnot, these little guys are just the best way of doing that, because you can just take a little moment to catch something, and then you can put a brush on top of it, and it works. And I want you to think now, you've been doing this, some of you, for 9 episodes now, and have you been able to do this outside of this Monday time? And I think it is something that is worth trying. So going out either into the garden or taking it with you to work, and on a lunch break, have a little bit of a sketch, put some on top. And I'd love you to send those pictures through to me and say, you've been lying to us. This is not as easy as it looks. And it's absolute rubbish that one can draw with stick figures. But everything in life worthwhile takes a bit of practice. So where you see something, it's like pretending that we are there, and you are wanting to be able to quickly break it down into its most essential parts. That is the essence of drawing, is trying to break something down into its most essential parts. Okay, so we have got 6 minutes past now. We are going to draw for about 30 minutes. Let's get you really up close and personal there now, and hopefully you will be able to see. Nice. Okay. Right, so you can see me relatively well there. If we were to put last ones up. Drawing the arse end of a horse there. No, for some reason you guys are very... Let's just leave that there for a second. Get your painting going. Let's just turn the settings down. My apologies that it is... There we go, that's a bit better. Okay. Sorry, Mr. Horse. Okay. Right, so there's the middle of our page. What we're going to do is we're wanting to try and work towards the background, and we are going to venture up the north coast today. So starting right in the middle, I want you to bring a line that's going to head down towards 1/4, halfway, 2/4. About 1/4 is about there. All right, what we're going to do is we are going to start in the middle, and we are going to head about halfway towards the side. Nice clean line down towards the right hand side there. Okay. It's too shiny, eh? Every week is a different challenge. There we go, that'll do. Okay, so not as bright as we could have it, but we're good to go. So a little straight line coming out to the side there. What we're going to do is put a flat line on the right hand side and a flat line, so a horizontal line on the top and on the bottom. Okay, so you can make the one on the bottom a little bit longer, so it gives us a bit of depth. And we come out and lengthen. So, repeating that line on the top. So we have a horizontal line there, horizontal line that's a bit bigger, so that it looks like it is coming out towards you. Remember, both of those lines, the top one is horizontal and the bottom one is horizontal. Looking spectacular so far. If everybody's not dizzy by now, definitely going to be by the end. Okay, so then on the other side, excuse me, that's not a dry cough. On the left-hand side, you're coming down to the halfway point, and you've got 1/4. If we were to go to 1/4 of the way across, and just drop down a little bit below that other one, what we're going to do is our last week of venturing into wild territories. This one is horizontal. This one's a little bit below. Same one, horizontal, but maybe curving down just a little bit to the right, and it is below the other one. You see, we're starting a little bit below the other one. And what it's going to do, this one's going to sneak around, it's going to come around, and it's going to end below this one as well. So we're standing right in the front here, and we're going to try and get it to curve around. So we want everything to spread out from around us. spread out around us, so we are part of the center of it. So whenever you are sitting in a place, you want to be able to think, where can I put stuff? So we little curve down, and we want to come not down to the end of the page, we're just coming around to about a thumb's width from the bottom there. Okay, I've gone too far there. You want to come to just below the other one. All right, nice and wide, and then we're going to do a little curve, and it comes out and it goes wide again. There. You can now. There we go. All right, so horizontal, horizontal, a little bit curving into the right there. And there we go. So we're going to lean, and you go in and out. So it's a little bit of a curve, tight curve, and then it, so it's sort of maybe a bit of a tighter curve up the top, and then it curves down to the bottom there. All right, and on both of those, let's give them a little bit of form. So straight down, about half the height as they are wide. A little bit thinner at the top there, on the right-hand side there. So on all three of those fronts that we can see, we are doing verticals. And then again on the left-hand side, give it a bit of a vertical there. And again on the front, we've got a vertical. Okay, so we're seeing that there is that, we've got that option of creating form by just drawing cubes of different shapes. So there you can join up your lines now, and you've got a nice sort of cube that we've got going there, a stretched cube. And again on the other side here, this one ends up being a little bit more tricky though, and we think, well, how are we supposed to draw that? We can see the left-hand side of it. Well, you can use the other line as your leading line. It's called a leading line. We give it a little bit of a clue there. We come in and we go, and we just keep going until it meets that line. All right, so we can go until it meets that line, and you'll see that it disappears because you can't see it anymore. And as that crosses over, if we just go to our right-handmost point of this curve, and just give a little bit of a construction line there, going straight down, we should be able to then again start from the bottom here and move up towards that construction line. So we see, we come down and we join there. Okay, so we've got those two lines joining. And that is our basic structure for the evening. And the rest now, what we're going to do is really focus on creating a lot of chaos, a lot of scribbling. So I want you to now just scribble from that bottom left-hand side straight out. I want you to scribble, nice bit of scribble there. Really get that pen to work for you. We're scribbling in that direction. Try and make it as straight as possible. Going up until we meet the other side of it. Keep going as if those lines were to continue coming out. You would then keep going in that direction. Let's fill up that space nice and quickly. All right, now you should have done that nice and quickly, because it doesn't matter what it looks like. It is really just trying to fill the space with a little bit of chaos. And same is going to happen on the other side here now, as we are going to come excuse me, come off to the right. We're going to come down. So we're sneaking off to the right, and then we're turning down off the page. So we create, I suppose, a little bit of a culvert there. And then as we come off the left-hand side, let's fill that up again with scribbles. And the reason we're doing this, we're just trying to create the quickest way of making a little bit of darkness, because we are going to be in a sort of culvert scenario here, where the water drops through underneath this tunnel and disappears. Now let's get an idea, in case the pickup truck has told us that it's coming to collect us. We've only got a little bit of time left. What we want to try and do is get a sense of, where does this whole thing end up? Where is the end of this road, and where does it disappear to? So 2/3 of the way up, if we had to think about the Fibonacci sequence, which starts out in 1/3 and it gets bigger and bigger all the time, all of those, you will find that if you can have your vanishing point as part of that Fibonacci sequence, you might have a vertical, for example, and you start down the bottom, the top left, or whatever, whichever one it is, you want to find that you will create that balance. And so we're going to use this top left-hand side here as a bit of guidance in terms of having 1/3. If we think of 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, top third, if we come across to being just beyond the top of our right pillar here, 2/3 of the way up, beyond the right-hand side of our top of the pillar there, 2/3 of the way up, come across a little bit, what we want to be able to do is have a line that comes down and then curves in. So we're going to come straight from there, we're going to come down, turn just as we get to the thing and pull it in. Now those sorts of observations is like a back to front upside down Nike tick. So as opposed to it being a reverse D, it's not a reverse D at all. It's got a bigger bulge down the bottom, so it starts out straighter, then it curves as it takes the corner, and as it takes the corner it then joins this race to be straight here. And so the whole time when you're working, you're wanting to try and get a sense of flow the whole time. Okay, and so on this side of the road now, it's crept around and it's going around there, it's pulling around. What we're going to do is get it to go around and then come and join. So it does creep around and then it comes, and as you get up to the top there, it's not too far away. We want to try and still keep an idea that that's how wide the road is going to be. You come down and then join across. So as the road goes up and around, we still have a width there. It's not going to get to a point. So just make sure you don't end up having a point at the top here. We're going to keep it nice and flat and quite wide as it disappears over the crest there. That's not our focus today. What we're going to be looking at is creating some nice contrast in the foreground here. A very quick little bit of background here. What we want to do is create a bit of a forest. Now you guys are going to be fantastically good at this by now, where we're just going to squiggle our way along at the top here. Okay, you can see it's very light there. We're just going to squiggle our way along there, up and down, and think about what was the greatest part of your day. And it just bumbled along regardless anyway. There were probably some stresses and some strifes and whatnot, but you got here. And it might have been really quite tricky, a tricky day. Things are quite tricky at the moment. So if you got this far and you're sitting down to do a bit of drawing, that's first class, and give yourself a pat on the back. And you've got your little drawing that's going across here. You come in front of it now and do exactly the same thing. Now this is something we haven't done before, where we do our repetition of these little cauliflower shapes, but we're leaving the page and joining the page again. So they end up being little repetitions of wobbles. They're little vertical wobbles as they go. I'm going to just zoom you in on that so that you can see the way that we do that. It wobbles up, and you're in control of creating a lovely overlapping quality there. So it is all random. It's totally random, and the more random it is, the less it ends up being subject matter. You don't want this to be subject matter at the back here, or the focus. You want it to just be quiet information at the back here, and this is really quite nice. You can just scribble away, scribble away, scribble away, scribble away. And the more you scribble on top of it, and the more you scribble on top, the more you realize, oh my goodness, that's actually looking quite amazing. I can do this. I think I can, I think I can, I can, I can. Just keep swimming, just keep scribbling, and you'll get there very nice and easily. Okay, so now once I've done that, what I'm going to do is come on top of it. You'll see I'm just using a straight marker. I'm just coming, just doing a nice flat, and I'm leaving a little bit of a gap on the top here. All my light is being left up the top of this tree line, but underneath here, I'm just giving it a little bit of a tickle over of a scribble. I'm going to go all the way across there on the front side here. Okay, and we just keep going across, and we'll fill that space up and go all the way across the side. I'm keeping the base of it relatively flat. As I'm going across there, I'm just going to filter off, and then I get to the end. I don't worry too much about the detail on the side. You're going to find that your drawing might filter out on both sides. Okay, exciting. Right, you can't go wrong now. This is really where you get the water to come down to the bottom. You get the road to come down. We saw we treat this as a river. We found that as our land came down to the river the other day, we have little lines that come down and say, if you were to drop water there, it would run down and meet the river. It would run down and meet the river. And so we want to do the same thing. We have little lines going down to meet the road, and then it comes up and then it filters off to the left. And so by doing that, it shows the shape that you can create. Now, you can go up and then do a left bucket, then come up and then go down. And you could then create, it shows that you've got a little, I think maybe a hippo's come along and it's nudged its nose in there and it's scrubbed its head, and then an elephant's come and rubbed its bottom on the ground there, and it's got a nice, soft, smooth. So you get the option to look at creating nice little bit of texture, but you'll notice that I'm getting wider as I come further towards me. All right, come closer towards me. And as you get further away, your lines get closer together. All right, until eventually they are just showing a depth. So the whole time you're trying to give as much information as possible by doing as little as possible. Okay, so we're going to come to the front here. And what you can do is think, well, maybe this was... And Marion, I know that, who very kindly shared this image with us. I said it's not going to be absolutely identical because we don't have time to do all these hundreds of trees that are in here. It is quite a densely populated area up in Mtunzini here. But what we're going to do is just give it a little bit of flat line going off the back there, so it's a loose interpretation. And we give ourselves, maybe that's a little bit of a grassy. We've done some good deforestation there. I don't know if that's probably an oxymoron. But there we've got a little bit of open space. To complement it on this side, let's jump across and see if we can do exactly the same thing here. And so we've got the culvert ends, the concrete ends, and it comes up and then comes across. And it comes up and comes across. So you get these beautiful little lines going up, and they immediately go horizontally and peter out. So you can press hard with your pen, and then you can press lightly. Now, as it goes around the corner, these guys are going to get close together very quickly, till eventually you're not actually going to see those curves. So it's just on as it turns the bottom of that reverse D, the bottom of the upside down Nike tick, as soon as it starts turning right, you're not going to be able to see those tips going down, because it's now, you're just seeing the top. And it just allows for you to get, again, a little bit more information. So it will give the appearance that, you know what, we're seeing the full face of it at the front here. But then as it goes around the corner, we don't get to see much more. Okay, wicked. And that's actually quite nice. You could put a little bit of a scribble in the front as it hits there, because what that does, that shows that, you know what, the water is gathered on the inside corner here, and it comes around and joins before it hits the front. And then it's going to scribble right past here, and we're going to have some really nice little puddle that will develop itself at the front here. And also on the far side here, if that rain were to run down on the left-hand side there, and it will join and dig in probably on the left-hand side here, we can run a couple of lines backwards and forwards in there, creates a little bit of mud perhaps, and it gives it, again, a little bit more information. And you can run one or two lines in, and as you to sneak around that corner on your bicycle. I'd go slowly in the wet. All this nice hardware, those red corrugations, as you start smelling them, Mopani forest. I don't think they're Mopani forest in Mtunzini. That was just too much imagination. Okay, so let's come back forward into the front here. We want to be able to put a little bit of a forest coming in here. Now, how would you put a forest? You'd think, well, we've done this whole idea, and just give me 2 seconds to show you here. I'm going to just sneak in a little bit closer again, and I'm going to give ourselves the option of, you can just scribble around, scribble, 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 give yourself a little bit of an outline. I want to go up and meet the edge of the road there. All right? And you can come around and give yourself a little bit of space here. So we've got like a couple of bushes that go around in the front here. You're establishing that little space. And by doing that, you can then very easily, again, like we did at the top here, you can then come and scribble, making sure you don't go over the top of your concrete culvert there. You then have the ability to show the bottom of your first row of trees, and then you take a gap, and then you go into the bottom of the next row of the bush so that you're showing one is overlapping the other. And you sneak that in. Okay, so give yourself a go there. You want to be able to, I'm going to zoom you out again, and what you can do is you can create that lovely horizontal, and we are going to climb a little bit higher on this side here, because we are closer. We're going to climb a little bit higher there. So you see, you can overlap it, and we're going to bring in some palm trees here in the front, which will give us a bit of texture. So just like we were doing this drawing on the left-hand side here, we want to be able to just sneak in very lightly, and we're just wobbling over the top, so not too detailed. We just gently just scribbling on top, and you literally see I've got my little fingers touching the surface, and it's allowing me to just press lightly, and I can almost just shake my way through that, just tickle the way over the top. They are not U shapes, they are all cauliflower shapes, so all flower shapes going up, and we just scribble our way through there, scribble our way through. It's almost creating a foundation like a brickwork, and you see how that beautifully just overlaps itself. And then what you can do once you've created that, you have the option of coming in and saying, I want to create some more depth in that. And so what I can do is, I'm going to pick one of the lines. I'm going to pick one of those lines. I'm going to go just below it, and I'm going to scribble it in. Leave a gap on top of it, and scribble it in. Leaving a gap on top of it, scribble it in. And by doing that, and these scribbles are literally just going straight up and down. You can see that, because what it does is perhaps even give a sensation that we are growing up in the direction that we're scribbling. And that actually works quite nicely. So you can press light and you get thinner scribbles as you go further up. As we perhaps get to more light, we can scribble a little bit less and a little bit less, and we get until it fades out towards the top there. Okay, so we've got that sort of covered, and it's really quite nice in that it isn't too specific. It's not too specific. Okay, and the idea is that you could theoretically then come and do exactly the same thing on the other side of the bridge here. You would be able to do that. Now, you really have to enjoy this process, because next week we've got a real surprise for you in that we're going properly ballistic into some totally different stuff. Because you are now professionals, we are going to really put pedal to the metal and do something exciting, totally different. And I know there are going to probably be lots of angry faces, but if it weren't difficult, it perhaps wouldn't be worthwhile. So let's now, I think we've got that scribbling on. Let's just jump across very quickly whilst we're here and do a couple of cauliflowers on the left here, a couple little squiggles of trees, just a suggestion so that we're going up there. Just going up, you'll see I'm pressing very lightly. You can hardly see it on the screen because it is very, very light. It is not straight lines. They are not, they are all just tickles of going sort of rumbling up and rumbling up and rumbling up, rumbling up. I'm not coming down beyond the edge of my first curve here. I'm just filling that space. And what that does is it creates a lovely little bit of a scrub hedge there. So on the top here, now I can do exactly the same thing. I can pick a couple of these little lines and just go in a couple of these little lines, making sure I'm leaving light as they topple over. So topple over there. So you're getting a little bit of that light that's reflecting off of the top of that guy. Hey, we're 25 minutes. We've really got to scream along now. Okay, so we've got that going there. As we come into the front here, this is where the idea is that we're wanting to create a palm front that will sneak out of the top here. Now, palms have having a long line that's going to come out across our path here. Okay, so it's starting in this dark area, in this gully here, in that little space. We'll start and we're going to run a nice strong line going out. Okay, a single strong line there going out. And then from that, you will see, if I were to zoom you in, we're going to look at creating from each one of these, you're going to have a little splice coming off. So it's a nice sharp guy coming off there at the end and comes back to the stem, and sharp as it comes off. Okay, and it will go all the way out. You can get those sharp ones to come out all the way across. Try and keep them the same. You don't have to take your off the page, but as it gets further up towards the top, it gets sharp until eventually it joins the end. Okay, and then on the other side as well, we'll do exactly the same thing. But let's let you finish that, and then what we want to do is we want to just scribble those guys in, and just color them in so they're nice and dark. Okay, so we've got that nice strong contrast in the foreground there as it comes over. There we go. So you see there's a definite change in the way that looks. In the background, what we're going to do is again do them behind, and again we're going to run those things. We're going to go over what we've drawn, and then as we're just going to do exactly the same thing and go up again. And what that's going to do is, let's zoom you up on there, and it's going to look like what we've done is just gone straight over. We've gone straight over. We're creating the leaf that's on the other side. All right, the leaf's on the other side, so we're going to just go back over the top of it. And we're going to come and shade around that in due course. Now that you've got that recipe, we can bring another one in at the front here. All right, and we're just going to do exactly the same thing again. Strong shape, getting sharper and sharper and sharper as it goes up to the end. And then we can put another one in as well, in the center there. Strong shape, getting closer and closer as it gets to the top. All right, let's zoom out there, because we want to now be able to just shade these guys in. Okay, so we've got that. And the idea is that now, how would you show that that is also coming straight up? Well, we just draw a line that's straighter as it comes up. And we draw another line that's going straighter to the right, and another one that's coming straight out towards us, and then finally one that perhaps crosses over and comes straight towards the right-hand side. So you can see it's almost like a hand that is flicking out there, flicking straight up, coming down to the right. The one on the right is a little bit shorter as it comes down to the right hand side, even shorter. And then this one that crosses over on the right hand is almost horizontal. Okay, and so by doing that, you can, again, put those little fronds on, little fingers, and the one behind it as well. Again, these are very crude, spiky guys, but if you had more time, you'd be able to make each one of them a little bit more accurate. And you're probably dying inside thinking that is not what our little palm fronds look like. Well, we are doing our very best here at simplifying it to be similar to palm fronds. And that center one there, we've got them coming out on both sides because they're saying, hey, excuse me, on both sides. That's gracious. Excuse me, that's terrible. Okay, let's keep going up. There. All right, and we're going to just, again, very quickly try and shade those guys in. And by this stage, I'm pretty sure the guys that came to pick you up have sat down and joined you because you would have had a spare pen and a spare piece of paper. A kettle would have boiled and you would have condensed milk tea on the go. There we go, let's just shade those guys in. Doesn't have to rock, really just wanting to get some ink into those spaces because when the brush comes on top of it, it's going to create its own magic. Okay, but what we can see is that it does create, I'm going to zoom out there, and you'll see that it does create its own excitement, and you can, if you wanted to simplify it even further, you can have a line that just comes out, and obviously you can put thinner little pieces that come out, and that would also serve the same sort of purpose, I suppose. Okay, now we are going to put a bit of a puddle in the foreground here, but in order to do that we're going to need a little bit of ink in reserve. So let's jump forward onto the left hand side here for the last 5 minutes of what we're going to work with in the ink. Let's block in the left hand side of this brick work here, and again at the front let's block that off. Alright, we've got that as a nice source of dark ink. The same, let's apply everything on the left hand side, let's scribble that in, and on the left hand side of this one on the left hand side there at the front. Okay, and then also as we scribble over the top of our palm, we're creating a little bit of dark in the background here. Alright, and if you have a quick look on the right hand side here at the front of this, I've got my pen holding it right at the back, and what we're doing is we are scribbling up just to give it the grass. We're flicking on the boss here to at the front here just to be able to give it some really different energy right at the front here, and we would be able to do that on the left, but that's where we need to be able to just work right up to the front here. Okay, so I'll let you flick there for a couple more seconds, and then we're going to look at how we're going to take care of this lovely puddle that's accumulated in this dam at the front here on the path. Now what a puddle does is it usually follows the edge of the road. So we've got our first marker. Let's go up to halfway along the bridge. All right, and then we're going to come down along the edge of the bridge until it's just past that bridge, and then we are going to go horizontally. We're going to horizontally to create our puddle, and then as we start going up, we're in the center of the road, and then we're going to slowly take a curve back until eventually we're joining our brickwork. We don't do anything else for now. We're just wanting to be able to get an idea of where that area is. But what I do want you to do is come as if you were following the road, and let's give ourselves a little bit of ink in the foreground here. We just want to run our lines exactly the same direction that we were, not as many as we had, and the idea is that we want to be able to run it almost up to the edge of our little puddle there. Okay, so the whole time what we're trying to create is this idea that this is all going in the same direction, all our lines, and I keep saying it when we have lessons, is the idea is that you're wanting to be able to draw in the direction that an object is growing. So every mark that you make is an element of completion. And so here we've got a basic idea that might be the round of the pond, and this is the direction that the ruts might be going in, and we're going to try and fill in some space on the other side here as we get to it. But we've run out of time for drawing, so what we're going to do is we've got the essence of everything that we could do. We could put the dark again on the other side, just repeat what we did there. We could put more palms in on that side as well. And if we've got time, we'll come and I'll show you what we can do at the end. But let's switch across to your paintbrush. And I just have a very, very simple, you'll see I've got a very simple, what is this? It's like a dollar hog hair. And you see it's 4 rand, quite a cheap brush, but all it needs to do really has the ability to pick up some ink, pick up some water, and I've got a little bottle top here, and I'm picking up a little bit of ink, and we're going to focus on this puddle in order to get it, because you guys are professionals now at doing the rest of this, which we will do in no time at all. I want to focus on this puddle and making sure that we get that right. We're going to pick up some ink by running our paintbrush along the front of our line of brickwork there. And once we've done that, we are going to immediately go with that ink along the front of this pond area here. Okay, I'm going to just zoom you in again a little bit more detail there. So I'm going to do that quickly again. I've picked up some ink from there, and I'm coming across, and I'm pointing my brush to that top edge there, and I'm coming forward. Now what this is doing is it's reflecting this field, these trees at the back here. So you're then going to pick up your brush and then just dab it in this area at the back here, on top of that. So you're just dabbing, a little bit different to how we normally do, I think, but so you're having a little bit of a gap. All right, and as we continue to come further forward, let me zoom you out there, we're going to keep going. We're picking up that ink and we're going to come forward. I'm going to pull it all the way across to the right hand side here and along to the front. It's picked up a little bit of reflection, and we are just taking a little bit of a gap. So the left hand side of this puddle has got some gap, and it's just straight back to the white. All right, because what we're going to do is, if you dip your brush then into the water, we've got a very light line that we can pick up on the other side here, and it goes back to just being the road. We want that absolute contrast to happen in that little bit of puddled area there. So we haven't done anything else other than pick up a little bit of ink and put it into our starting space there, which has got a little bit of the color that would be up the top. It's very soft, no hard outlines. You really just getting a magical sense of, oh, that's actually really nice and flat. And that's what's amazing about watercolor, is that you can put water down and it does a lot of the work for you. And so once we've got that, then now what we can do is what's left with our brush, we can just scribble outwards from that. Okay, so we're going to pick up a little bit more of this water, and we're going to now just run our brush into the front there and over that culvert on the right hand side there. And then whilst we're here, we can also just flick up with our brushes on the right hand side here. And that's actually quite exciting. It's got a lovely little flickability there where we're flicking up. Alright, so there we've got some nice contrast on the front right hand side that you've been able to complete. You can continue to do that by sneakily going just behind the top of your bridge. Are you wanting it to be the strongest contrast? Alright, so you've got that real clean slab of light bouncing off there where you might be sitting a little bit later on today and looking the other way, and you'll be using this little puddle of water here to run the ink with. And with that brush you can now just go on top of all those little palm fronds that you made. Alright, you'll see that I will literally just flick, maybe not necessarily even accurately going on top of where the ones were that we were doing, because it doesn't matter. We're just giving a sensation that that's what palms do. They flick out. And what we're going to do is zoom back in again, and what the idea is that if you were to continue, you pick up some of that, you've got it on your brush, you can then go into the background and you can do more little palm fronds that have a little bit of light gap, and then you leave a bit of space, and then you put a couple more in the back there, and then you do a couple more right in the back, and then finally a couple more perhaps in the back here, and you're leaving gaps between them. And what's nice about that type of work is that it looks like the sun might be just bashing straight off of them, and you get a nice sense that, you know what, there's a lot going on down in this little puddle, in this little gorge here. Okay, so you get what's really establishes itself as a nice amount of depth that happens in the back here by just using a similar type of mark making. Okay, let's bumble our way quickly forward into the foreground here, where we did our lovely cauliflower shapes. Remember that you're wanting to leave the light, and the best advice I can give you is to not overpaint it. It is just as important to leave light as it is to color over the ink. So you're wanting to really get as little ink covered, you get the ink covered for as little work as possible. You want to be able to leave the light. And whilst we've got that nice and dark, let's come across to the other side and let's block that in as well, because the nice thing about that is that we've got that tone going, and on the left hand side of the bridge we've got that tone going, and the tone coming to the front here. Oh, into the coffee again. Goodness gracious, Brent. Okay, we get it to come forward to the left hand side, and you'll notice how these lovely marks, I'm totally off the page, off my mark, which would be the edge of my page would be here, and goes there and then goes up the side. What's nice is that you get your lines to just finish off the page even. They go beyond the page. It gives the idea that, you know what, our adventure goes beyond this. So it comes into the page. And what we've done is we've blocked in there, pick up a little bit of the dark there on the front there. On the left hand side you can give a suggestion that, you know what, we are disappearing down to the gully there. And ask yourself, would that have been the mark you would have made perhaps? How would we finish this off? Well, we want to show that if the water dropped there, it would disappear downhill. And what that does is also it follows and continues with the way that we'd work here. Pick up a little bit of ink and we just run our lines down in that sort of direction. We're not going to give it too much detail, but what it does show is that, you know, I do drop into the gully there somewhere. Okay, and that's probably where the little leopard is hiding, waiting for us to disappear and go back to swimming with his mates. Right, we're going to just run up the left-hand side here and just trickle, 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 trickle. And again, less is so much more. As you get up to the top there, less is so much more. You're going to, again, you just want to, like you were doing the drawing, you want to be able to just subtly put that tone into the back there. And you could run it you're picking up a little bit of that light, and we're going to come across the same height, and we can come across, you can get a sense that, you know what, it did carry on behind here. So there we go, we're going across the other side, and I'm putting my brush back into the water, picking up a little bit of this ink, and I'm going beyond it and up on top of it where there are no lines. But what that does is, like we did last week, it shows more depth. It really does allow the work to keep talking for itself into the distance there. Let's get rid of that hard line of the road at the top there, and by doing that it tends to allow it to just disappear into something our imagination can take over. Right, and last of all, you've done very well, is we're going to run our line down, our brush, along the edge of that road there, as it comes around the corner and forward, and on the edge there, as it comes around in front of that bridge, comes down. So we get light bashing on the road. We get light bashing on the top of our pillars on either side here. Then as we come further forward, we can establish again a shadow area right at the front here. Right at the front here, before the water hits the puddle there. We've got a real nice contrast. I'll stop using that word nice. We've got a lovely, oh goodness. We've got contrast in the front here, where we're coming into the shade at the front here. You could pick up your pen again and give it a little bit more just so that we've got a little bit more contrast right in the front here, if you wanted to. Alright, so there we've got our basic idea. Okay, there's options to really put in a couple of bricks, maybe a little couple of stones next to the road here, as it's a bit more information if you wanted to, perhaps. And those are things that are really quite nice to look out for. Are the little odds and ends. Maybe there's a couple of butterflies or whatever the case may be. All right, so there we go. As I said, next week we will be moving into something totally different, but same time, same place. Give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the evening, and please feel free to share it around, and don't forget to send us your pictures so that I can have a look and I can either give you an angry face or a happy face. Just remember, you cannot be wrong. Safe space. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us.